I find music to be totally optimistic. I think it's a great purveyor of good and a force for good and bringing people together and forging community in a world where there's evil forces trying to tear us apart.
It's the backdrop to my emotions. It's the way I process the world. It's, every feeling that I have or have ever had can be expressed in the lyrics of a song or the soundscape of a song. And, a lot of my life philosophy comes from, the lyrics of the music I've listened to growing up.
I remember breaking through a wall where I became a critical music listener. There are things that you first hear when you're half paying attention to something. Maybe it's the lyrics or a catchphrase, but it almost takes a little bit of effort to have broken through as a jazz listener to where all of a sudden the conversations the musicians are having are something that I'm going, ooh, this is really interesting to me. The sound aesthetics that you find. So it's been a joy. What happens is as you start to get deeper into the creative expression, especially in improvised music that I love, I feel you start to capture these different layers of humanity coming through, and there are timeless, joyful types of music, and there's timeless, sorrowful types of music, and I think they all have a place in our beautiful artistic expression of our world.
There's mystery still in the music. There's mystery in the scene. There's things for people to go find and discover. They're still in it. There's the sense of allegory and the sense of story arc that's timeless. Some of the characters in the lyrics are timeless. Some of the jams are timeless. For me, the music of Grateful Dead's the soundtrack of my life, going back to my family home, and then continues to just be inspiring. What you can do with it, the freedom, the beating heart of John Coltrane in the music coming through. That's what I hear amongst everything, bluegrass, Americana. It's got a fusion that's truly American and unique.
I think could listen to 40 China Riders in a row and still be engaged and interested in that. And as you find the Dead, and that was what was interesting about going through Dan finding the Dead and just watching somebody fall into it, and the different eras and how different it sounded. I'm always a unicorn because my first album my uncle gave me was Without a Net. So to me, 90s Dead is what the Dead are supposed to sound like, which I didn't find out that I started playing in a Dead band that is the most unpopular opinion that exists. It's this polished, sparkly Dead. And then when you go back, they just have sounded like 6 different bands playing, hundreds of songs, thousands of different ways. It's the most interesting music that's ever been recorded.
Yeah, in the year 2016, we were in the Danielle show. Around the winter. And Steve saw Maureen's Jazz Cellar was doing a Dead Night. He said, we can do this Dead Night. All of a sudden we came home, had a rehearsal. The 3 of us sang together. They didn't even give me a microphone in Danielle Sherry Band because Steve and Dan are such fantastic singers. And Danielle was the lead singer. So I got a microphone. All of a sudden, we sang 3-part harmonies, and it felt pretty good. And that was how we kept on doing it.
There. Give us a room full of people who are into the music already. Like, they're going to be blown away. Like, not because we sound the most like the Dead or whatever, but it's like we're giving 110%. You haven't heard anything like it. The vocal harmonies, are top notch. And when we played SOBs in April, I was kind of going through after and canvassing the crowd and just to kind of get some data on how people found out about the show and why they were there. And I ran into these 2 girls and I said, where'd you hear about the show? They're like, we saw you at Bowery Electric in 2018. We were just waiting for the last 4 years for you to come back to New York. So, that kind of thing. And we noticed that when we've been trying to do these YouTube videos that we've published, mainly with the onus of the Dead Covers Project, but then we started publishing them on one-offs. And you're seeing all these comments where they're, come to Cincinnati, come to Oklahoma, come to Argentina. Now, that's not data where we can really book that show yet, but the thought is over time, if the name gets out there, in the Dead community, that you're able to do that. And for us, that's the dream. If we can fly into, a cool place for a weekend, play a show in one city, drive to the other one, come home and see a bunch of people and play a couple great shows. And we're sitting there and he just looks at all of us. He goes, I got the name. Dead Meat. Like,
dead meat.
Now, I think compounding that problem was that we took the artwork to a buddy of ours, Steve Luongo, who's a really talented artist. And I think, he went to reimagine the Steely and put a chicken wing in there with instead of a lightning bolt. And I think it kind of solidified the meat part of it rather than the stupid pun, which is kind of a tradition in Dead bands. You have all these. Every Dead band has some either song lyric or it's a pun on Dead or it's a pun on Jerry or so it kind of it's kind of a blessing and a curse at this point. It's definitely polarizing. We do get all the time that people hate the name.
So that for me has been
the joke is every time we get off stage, we walk back into the green room and I look at everyone and I say, and I don't even have to say it anymore. Everybody just looks at me and they go, "Best Dead gig ever." When we came together to learn the songs, we kind of went more off of like chords and like the feel of the song than we did like, oh, how does Bobby play this? Or especially Dan, who Dan is a very interesting musician because he's all ears. Like he has the best set of ears that you will ever find on a musician, and he's not even for the most part like trying to play bass lines that were there. He's just playing the root note and some other interesting things, and he's playing with his thumb and he's really attacking it, and that gives a lot of that like harder sound. Tom comes from jazz roots. I come from weird roots of a lot of Allman Brothers and like jam bandy stuff like Dave Matthews Band, but also like 90s music. So I kind of approach guitar differently than probably most people. None of us are students of the Dead, and maybe Tom, but in the way where we were sitting in our rooms as kids, like trying to transcribe Jerry solos, except Tom was. But
I do like Mississippi Half Step. My dad was a big connection for it, and he always gets a chuckle when I say, on the day when I was born, Daddy sat down and cried. We have like a little bit of a psychic connection while the show's around.
On the day when I was born, Daddy sat down and cried. Had them all just as plain as day could not be denied. They say that Cain caught Abel.
Challenging song. Love the chord progressions, the solos, and I love that we can, take it to a new place when we cross the Rio Grande.
Perfect. My expectation was a small little PA system on a street corner, thinking like the street fair, maybe 100 people standing around.
Welcome back to Dancing in the Streets. How you doing? Today's entire festival is put on as a gift to the community from Maureen's Jazz Cellar. If you notice, you don't have to pay at all to get in. So there is a tip jar up here. Please help us recoup some of our costs so we can do this every year. What do you say? Don't forget to go over there and buy some ice cream. Chris Speziel is dying over there. He's eating all the profits. Buy some ice cream for the kids and for the adults. Don't forget to hydrate. Visit, drink a lot of water. Go easy on the edibles. We don't want to have to carry you out of here. Go easy on the edibles just because they're legal. Take your time.
As far as, you know, the feeling of playing on that stage, that definitely is in the top 5 for me. When I was expecting, you know, to play just another little, you know, kind of almost like a backyard show feeling. But it turned out to really be a kind of seminal moment for me in this band.
Come out. I'm always optimistic, so I had a feeling it was going to be a great day. Obviously, you need everything to line up, the weather, the people, and it really was perfect. Great job on sound, too, and production by Dave Reese and the crew. I've been going around for years encouraging everybody that we should do Dead Meat full time, and you know, and I'm hoping to optimistically drag us into being a national band that travels around the country. So where that lives or where that lands in the expectations of everybody having lives and obligations, I hope it lands somewhere where we see a lot of people in the future.
So I
Different
must have been
shows.
11 years old, because it was 1996. And I had just gotten into Dave Matthews Band. It was all I was listening to. It was just like consumed my life. And they were coming to Jones Beach, and I just wanted to see them more than anything on earth. And the classic situation, which was asking my dad to go, and the go ask your mother, and my mother was just so against it. She was like, there's gonna be people smoking pot there. I don't want you to be in that environment. Somehow I argued my way, my dad argued for me, and we got tickets. And I remember leaving late to go down to that show. And we're on the ride down, and we have the physical tickets from Ticketmaster, like the old days. And we're looking at them, and the opening act, my uncle is making fun of them, like, who is Bella Flem and the Flem Flickers? And we get down there a little late, we miss the opening act. And somewhere in the middle of that show, you know, Jones Beach is such an epic venue. It's got that beautiful backdrop of the sound. And they brought out the entire band of Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, and they played number 41. And they teased the song that they were writing at the time called Sojourn of Arjunda. Has like almost like a Irish feel to it. And it was one of the craziest, most amazing things still to this day I've ever seen. Just seeing Bella and Vic Wooten and all the guys from Dave Matthews Band with the backdrop of the sunset. It was just like a life-changing, absolute life-changing moment for me. And then I saw probably 45 more Dave Matthews shows in the next like 6 years, and then never saw him again. All right, if we're going right now, it's Tedeschi Trucks Band. You got to put the Grateful Dead in there. It's ridiculous not to. The Allman Brothers. I would probably sneak the Counting Crows in there. I think the Counting Crows are very underrated. I think Adam Duritz is a well underrated songwriter. And if we're going purely bands, I mean, right now it's probably Watch House, or they used to be called Mandolin Orange, husband-wife duo from I believe North Carolina, and they just have these voices that just meld together like nothing through.
But for me,
whether it was the Allmans or the Dead or Elvis Presley or Pink Floyd, pretty much everything in the classic rock space that I know is from my uncle and also from my dad. Like we all would listen to all that stuff together. When the Allmans would come to the Beacon in March, we would always go to one or two of them. And to this day, we probably see 12 to 15 shows together a year, the three of us. And for every holiday and birthday and whatever, it's just what we do. I haven't received or given a physical gift in probably 10 years. It's all concert tickets for the most part with the three.
Thank you so much. My dad and mom took me to my first concert. We went to see Bonnie Raitt at, I think it was called the Garden State Performing Arts Center back then, which has since been corporatized, but that was always the best name, Garden State Performing Arts Center. Bonnie Raitt, yeah, super cool. I saw the Allman Brothers close after that. I was 13 years old, and it was in the summertime. I remember just being thrilled just by how loud the band was. Just the sheer volume of a professional production like that is really cool to see. And people.
You could have missed the Stones, which I did to some degree. The Beatles are just, just so. It's interesting the way that the Beatles come to you. I think especially now, past their era, is that for me it was like, all right, you listen to an oldie station, you hear 8 days a week, or I remember my uncle, who's now in his 80s, playing All My Lovin', and to me that sounded like oldies. What was a thing. You had you go to a car show and they have the oldies station. I used to have a DJ business when I was 14, and we'd get hired for our car shows, and you'd play things and that that's like oldies music. But that's the Beatles. And then you go to the White Album and you're like, what is going on? They morphed so much over the years. The Stones, to me, are more static and obviously more timeless because they've just been playing for 60 years and crushing it. But as I get older, I appreciate the Stones more. It's probably more my style of music, but I just think the Beatles, as far as influence, is really difficult to argue.
I remember my mom singing to me James Taylor songs to go to sleep, and my dad's buddy would say, "This kid is going to need to marry a girl who can sing," because he's. But my dad was a huge Deadhead, and he had a giant tape collection, and he was actively building it back then in the early 90s. And so Grateful Dead was the soundtrack of our house, and then but my mom would keep it pretty interesting too with other cool contributions.
I think the great joy of my life as musically is being able to see Derek Trucks play guitar live. I think it's the best thing that you can see musically on earth. I think watching Derek Trucks play guitar it's an experience like nothing else on earth. So probably one of those first Beacon shows. I'm pretty sure that I was at that show with Jimmy Herring. Once again, you get to these places where I've seen so many of these shows and I've seen so many of these guests. But I do remember a Beacon show where they busted out Blue Sky, and it just kind of tied something together for me of having gone to see the Allmans at the Beacon for years, and at the time just not even being aware of who Derek was. I was just like, oh, this is the Allman Brothers, and it's great, and it's the music I love. But it wasn't until I really just kind of caught the Derek bug where I was like, this is just not an experience you can have anywhere else.
Beatles.
And
I love the Beatles. I love you can follow the Beatles' journey and almost come to age as a listener. I think it actually kind of set the stage for me to be able to love going back and discovering music of the past. There's so much available to somebody who was born when I'm born, 30 years after rock and roll began. And I enjoyed going back and digging it through. And the Beatles, it starts so poppy, those early I Want to Hold Your Hand records. And they get so interesting, and once the White Album comes, it starts to peel back into this ultimate humanity and psychedelia, all wrapped up in brilliant songwriting. Thank you. For me, one of the bands that I went back and listened to that just blew me away was the John Coltrane Quartet. Coltrane's totally searching, and I don't know what he finds, but he definitely pushes open the boundaries of reality with his tenor saxophone. And to think of him reflecting on the nuclear bomb at Nagasaki in Japan, and he's just taking out a saxophone and improvising, to just kind of hold that human spirit in the music, and literally a breath in the wind. I find music to be totally